For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Dan Weber for instant analysis of USC's Pac-12 Media Day appearance. Now, Dan, Pac-12 Media Day is a positive event. It's usually the time of the most hope at the start of a season. It seems like positivity is what you took away from today.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it kind of put 5 and 7 pretty far back because you're looking forward. You're not looking, backward as much. You're looking at last season, and I thought they made, a good case. I thought Clay really handled himself, well in terms of what did you get out of the whole hiring process and bringing in Graham Harrell and Aaron Osmus. What did you get out of spring practice? What do you get out of, going forward with this team? And it does sound like the lessons that you hope were, learned from last season are being learned. Again, the proof will start August 31st, on a Saturday. But that was pretty encouraging, even for, the people that are kind of rooting for this thing to go down, in flames early. I thought that they've got, after you listen to today, I think they've got a chance to get it right more than they did last year.
The word we kept hearing today was accountability, and the two people who seemed to be the most accountable and holding the team accountable were strength and conditioning coach Aaron Osmus and Graham Harrell. And we heard anecdotes all throughout the day about how both of those guys are instilling a new culture at USC. How positive were those changes for USC this offseason?
Well, I mean, I think they are the principal attitude changers. I think, I think Clay's very pleased with the fact that he's hung in there, and after Cliff Kingsbury leaves, Clay, didn't give up on what he wanted to do with the offense and how he wanted to do it and who he wanted to do it with, and didn't give up till he got Graham Harrell here. And then I think going back to an Aaron Osmus who'd been out of the strength and conditioning business as a coach and director for 5 years, and went and said, this is the right guy for this program. And, if it was up to the players, they think both of them are exactly the right guys. And when you talk about, there was, pretty much, I think, a toughness deficit with USC last year. And the players will tell you that those two are instilling a lot of toughness in different ways. The competitive physicality in the weight room and and just the demanding way that Harrell, who is this young and easygoing and, guy that looks like he's having a lot of fun, is extremely demanding on the players. It's an interesting, way that you look at him, and it doesn't come across to us that way, but players all, feel it's that way. It was interesting listening to Clay talk about how much Graham Harrell taught him about coaching football. Yeah. That was really interesting.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next point. You asked Clay Helton what he has learned from Graham Harrell, and the main thing he said was that college football can be simple. Clay said that sometimes they got caught up in past seasons trying to outsmart their opponent, but when it comes down to it, if your players don't know what they're doing, you can't win. You can't outsmart your opponent. So how much is Graham Harrell in that sense changing the philosophy of this team?
Yeah, Michael Pittman said last year, he said he would go, our playbook was this thick. He said this year it's 2 pages. I mean, he said, you really know what you're doing. I mean, how can you not? He said, it's great for the quarterbacks. Clay also said, what a quarterback-friendly offense this is. And I know guys are saying, well, what if somebody's struggling? And my point to Clay was, this is an offense where you almost don't see any quarterback struggle because the offense works so well for the quarterbacks, which is what Clay said. Yeah, I mean, I think they got in a tailspin last year where they kept thinking, if we add more play, if we do this, or we add this play or this formation or this, and it just, went out, kind of got out of control. And Clay, I like it that he admits that was absolutely not the answer, and that he stuck with going after somebody who would do things completely different from the way Clay was always doing them. I think it's interesting. I mean, and Drevno said the same thing. Wow, this is. Man, they installed the whole offense in 3 practices, and you could just keep repeating it. And Clay, they were, both kind of amazed that, as you said, college football can be a really simple game, and it's about your players being able to do what they do with great fundamentals, great technique, no hesitation, and it's not about you outsmarting the other coaches.
Yeah. Because then you end up outsmarting yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
But on the other side of the ball, I got to talk to Christian Rector, and one of the words he used to describe the mistakes of last year, he said complacency was kind of a problem and a problem on the defense. What did you hear from Christian Rector about Clancy Pendergast's simplified defense and how they're trying to turn a page this season?
Well, Christian's kind of an old hand, and he's kind of I was talking to him actually the other day after practice, and he said, Clancy's been coaching for a long time. He's not going to change that much because, we've heard the promises. We know, more players are going to be ready. It's going to be simplified. They definitely say it's simplified in terms of the verbiage and the communication. So they ought to be able to, really, have that communications down. Most of these guys, that are going to be at least the first group have played. So I think they've got that going for them. I think the big challenge will be getting enough rotations, getting enough guys into the who they feel confident about. That's the thing with Clancy. If he doesn't feel confident about it, he's like an NFL guy, which he was, is that you're not going to be out there if he feels like you don't know it really well. So, I think they all know that. But I think that's one we're going to have to wait and see how it actually works.
Yeah. Since this was the first time we got to talk to Clay Helton in a while, we were able to confirm some newsier items. One of those being that Daniel Maderbebe is not playing college football for the 2019 season. Clay Helton said that he hopes to see, he wishes Daniel well in 2020. And when you press further, Dan, he is essentially admitted that Daniel will be at another university if he plays college football again. So that's an interesting development. He also confirmed, I'm just going to run through and then we can discuss, but he also confirmed that Brew McCoy and Chris Steele have sent in their NCAA waivers, but they're essentially at the behest of the NCAA as far as timing goes, figuring out whether or not they will be eligible. Clay Helton said he hopes it'll be before the first game, but it's kind of a wait-and-see matter. And then finally, he confirmed that Talini Levi and Jalen Watson did not make it in the 2019 class. They were just short of being academically eligible. And then he confirmed that Trey Davis did enter the transfer portal due to a family matter. So some newsier items out of today's Pac-12 Media Day.
Yeah, and I think Clay gave it away a little bit with Daniel saying, work on his rehab, get his master's. And he said, I hope to watch him play football in 2020. Yeah. And I said, is that a possibility that he'd play football for USC? There was no answer. So I don't think there's a possibility that he's coming back. I guess, as Clay said, you never say never. And you didn't think Brew McCoy was coming back or Chris Steele. So, but that seems to be the game plan is for Daniel to, stay here, work on his master's, and then see where he is football-wise and try to play in 2020. I don't know if that's going to happen. And I think, all I can think about when you say you hope the NCAA gives you the word before the first game. And I can only think of Mike Williams when USC was essentially, I don't know if the plane had actually taken off for the opener when they were going to play Virginia Tech at FedEx Field in Landover, Maryland. And the NCAA ruled that, I'm not sure if he was in the air or how close it was. Was he on the bus? But it was like that close. And they said, yeah, he's not eligible. So USC's probably not had a great history of getting those kinds of NCAA rules. I think it was interesting that Texas had never gotten around to submitting the paperwork for Brew McCoy, so USC has done that, and it's basically the same waiver request as for for Chris, and obviously I think they think their chances are much better for Chris, based on other precedents that the NCAA would probably have to go against if they didn't allow Chris to play, but I'm not sure anybody's thinking they might let Brew play. The fact that we haven't seen him much this summer probably indicates that there's not that much thinking that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to naming a starting quarterback, Clay Helton said that he'll likely take all 25 fall camp practices before naming a starter. He said that if it does come earlier, he won't delay that just to go through all those 25 practices. But he said that they will be two spotting during practice. We saw that in spring where both quarterbacks will go at the same time. But Dan, what do you think about this quarterback battle?
I don't think you can probably do that. That would be an And no, I don't think they're going to go all 25 practices. I just think, and it's interesting, and I really like the idea of having legitimate competition. And if you're a senior and you start the first game, you think you're going to be able to start the whole season. I really like that for every position, except I'm not sure that it's workable at quarterback. I think you have to know week to week to week who's your quarterback. There aren't enough reps, for one thing. And I don't know that it's practical to wait until Friday before you announce the quarterback every week. But I understand the principle behind it. And when I kind of push Clay on that a little bit, his principle is they want it for the rest of those guys. I mean, they don't want anybody thinking, and I love that. I mean, that was, I think, of all the things that happened during Pete Carroll's time here, I think that was the single principle that maybe did more than anything was that competition at practice and guys trying to beat guys out and getting better. And I think that needs to happen with this team. I'm just not sure how it works with the quarterbacks. I think that's becomes a different issue.
Yeah, and that's a new wrinkle. Clay confirmed that the media will get a depth chart every Friday to know where the team is on the depth chart. But the interesting thing and kind of the contradictory thing that I noticed when Clay was talking about this is the best player starts. It doesn't matter seniority, but you kind of scratch your head when you think about last season and Tolo Badon and some other questionable decisions. How do you square up what Clay said about competition, the best player plays, when we haven't necessarily seen a consistent attitude towards that?
Well, I think that's one of those lessons that you hope, and that Clay, I think, kind of hinted at, that the head coach, has to be held responsible and has to learn. And he admitted learning, certain things. And he kind of got around to, they had a number of older players, and maybe he didn't come right out and say it, but it sounded like he was trying to almost say it.
Maybe.
Almost.
Maybe.
I mean, but I think he's saying it now. I think he kind of be saying, what we did last year, we're not doing this year. Guy that's snapping the ball on the ground, he's not going to be snapping. And I thought Michael Pittman made an interesting point. He was talking about something that he did in spring practice that he shouldn't have done, and he said Clay came out and he said Clay just ripped me, and he said he'd never ripped me before, ever. And he said, I was almost proud of doing something that would get him to rip me. He said, I really, that caught my attention. And he said it caught the team's attention, and they spent time talking about it, that, hey, Clay's not messing around. He means this. I know you can look at that two ways and say, yeah, what about last year? But you can also say, he seems to have convinced them that he isn't messing around. But yeah, it was interesting to and Clay said, that's my job. I'm the accountability guy. I'm the guy that has to hold them accountable. I don't want to be worrying about what the next play is. I want to be worrying about making it sure we don't do all the dumb things, the careless things, the lazy things that got us beat in those last 4 games.
Mm-hmm. We're only a couple days away from the start of fall camp. Any final thoughts, Dan, before we wrap it up here from Hollywood and Highland?
I know it was, without being, positive in a way, I thought it was a fairly realistic what's possible for this team. I mean, when you say good things about, and people just go nuts, and you say, wait a minute, they still have the best players in the Pac-12. They got more good athletes. I mean, maybe the margin between USC and the others isn't as great as it once was, but I don't think it should be wrong for them to be, thinking that they, deserve to win anything, but they deserve to be if they do all the right things, which it certainly seemed like they did in spring. It seems like with what we're hearing in the videos you see from the weight room, that they're doing the right things there. We'll see if they do the right things, the first 2 weeks of fall camp, and people will all get to see him in that scrimmage. And Clay said, that August 17th is a big deal, and he's all excited about how how they're going to be perceived and where they're going to be when that happens. I mean, I still think the key for this team is whatever they do the first few weeks, of August, the fall camp, they've got to figure out a way to continue it week after week, every single week of game preparation.
Yeah.
That's been the place where this has kind of fallen apart, where they've changed the offense or changed the playbook and all that. And having a simpler offense, I don't think Graham Harrell's going to change the offense. I think their ability to, to practice. And if Clay really wants the quarterbacks competing every week, you've got to practice hard. You've got to practice against real defense. I mean, you can't compete if you're just kind of doing walkthroughs.
Yeah.
So I think there are ways that if you want to feel better about this team after today, hearing extensive explanations from Clay, you've got some reason to say, okay, I feel a little better.
Yeah. The new wrinkle, though, is that, as you mentioned, the fall camp to regular season switch in practices, we'll, as media, be able to see all of fall camp practices, but when it comes to regular season, we will not only be able to watch the first 20 minutes of practice. So,
although Clay said 30 minutes. Clay gave us 30 minutes today when Clay was talking. He was, well, you get 30 minutes. Well, it says 20, but we'll take 30.
Yeah, we'll take 30. But what I was going to say is that we can't necessarily see if that change does happen.
Now, we won't be able to validate that. And that's one of the good things. If we've been critical, we also can be the person who says, well, I said this then, but I'm saying this now. Because as Clay even pointed out, we were pretty impressed with spring football and how it went. And we said so every single day. So I think they knew what we were saying in the spring. I just think I had an extensive discussion with some USC folks about maybe we were creating a culture of negativity, and I'm thinking, I don't think we created it. I think we reported it.
Yeah.
I think the negativity was there. I mean, did what we say, about practice not reflected in games? I mean, I think what we said about practice pretty much is the way the games went.
Yeah.
So, and we were saying it before they played the game. So I'm not sure we were, creating a culture of negativity, but we won't be there. Mm-hmm. Even to create a culture of positivity if it's warranted.
Yep. So it'll be a new wrinkle this season, so watch out for that. But that's going to wrap it up here from Pac-12 Media Day. For Dan Weber, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.